This morning I'm talking about how can I even say the word? I'm talking about belittlement. It's interesting to me, and this is why I decided to do it. First of all, to have such a subject. First is, we are living in a society today where belittlement is the norm, and yet it goes against the principles of life. It goes against belittling others, goes against the sacredness of a human being. So I felt this would be a good reminder not to fall into the trap of such thinking and behaviors. The other point is, and this has to do with Agni Yoga, the people who are not well studied in the subject of Agni Yoga are very daunted by it. They say it's over their head, they don't understand it, and so they walk away from it. They respect it. They respect this teaching because it is a teaching from the master, but they don't engage in any study because they think it is too difficult. Helena Roerich, in her letters, took many of the ideas of the master and elaborated on these ideas, putting them into a really practical, applicable way that we can use them in our lives, these ideas and principles. And so this is what I'm doing this morning. I'm taking one of her letters where she talks about belittlement and other ideas as well, but the key is on the subject of belittlement. So keep in mind that even though belittlement is an English word that we are all familiar with, it comes from the teaching. It comes from the talk this morning is based on her letters. And the majority of her letters were in response to questions and letters that she received from her students from all over the world. So let me start first with I've got too many papers up here. I thought it would be nice to start with just a real simple definition of the term belittlement. Belittlement means being dismissive of the importance of a person or thing. Belittlement means being dismissive of the importance of a person or thing. February 12th, this is a little information about Helena Roerich for those who don't know her. She was born February 12th, 1879, in St. Petersburg, Russia. And this is the description that the teaching tells us about her life as a child. It says, on this date, February 12th, a daughter was born to the family of an architect and academic, Ivan Shapashikhanova. That's not correct. Shapashinkov. That's it. I practiced this word last night. Shapashinkov. That was her dad, okay? Her name was Elena, Elena. In the United States and other English-speaking countries, we call her Helena Roerich. We are told that in her early childhood, Helena would experience profound and prophetic dreams and visions that were both personal and spiritual in nature. Helena, along with her husband Nicholas Roerich, brought Agni Yoga to the world, founding the Agni Yoga Society in 1920 and in 1946 it became incorporated under the laws of New York, the state of New York. Helena Roerich was a remarkable contemporary figure, an outstanding Russian woman. The teaching says from her father's bookcase at an unusually early age, she would read volumes on philosophy, honesty, justice. She engaged in a constant search for truth and had a love for all creative works. That all of these approaches as a child actually transformed her whole life. From morning to night, everything was performed for the benefit of humanity. The broadest correspondence was carried on. Books were written, works of many volumes translated. All this was done with an amazing, tireless spirit. Thus wrote her husband, Nicholas Roerich. About Helena Roerich, her friends wrote, "We, friends and admirers of the work of Helena, can receive fiery flashes of her broad and wise contemplation from her letters. For is not her whole life imbued with fire? The women's movement, cosmological researches, the living ethics, all of these can be found in her letters to friends." So this morning, we are going to review and consider a letter that she wrote in August of 1931. And this is what she wrote. About the subject of belittlement, let us not belittle. Let us clearly remember each disparagement, such as ridicule, adverse, negative criticism, and so forth, will bring the belittling and destruction of the work and of all co-workers, and tenfold so. As such revolts are against the affirmations of the hierarchy. It was said long ago that all your trunks will remain empty and your writing pens dry if you will not understand the affirmations of foundations. If the time when the school was established was difficult, it is 1,000 times more difficult now. If the time was considered serious when you were on your way, it is 1,000 times more serious now. If then the time was great, now it is 1,000 times greater. So her point, as she was trying to explain it, we were trying to understand it. She never tried to explain it, she did it. We were trying to understand it, is that what we start now, let's say we started our journey on the spiritual path 200 years ago. What was started 200 years ago is 10,000 times more difficult now. If we can just use our imagination a little bit and take it 200 years ago, when people of power heads of states, of corporations, of families, began to practice belittlement of others. And now fast forward to today, it is 10,000 times greater. Listening to the news is extremely difficult that has been for these past couple of years, because we're seeing belittlement of the president of a country belittling his cabinet, belittling those who are making a difference in this world, not just this country, but in this world, belittling those who are trying their best to move humanity forward, to inspire humanity. When I listen to teenagers today, it is quite frightening. So many teenagers have taken their lives. The suicide rate today of teenagers is 1,000 times greater than it was when I was a child. I know 3 children right now, teenagers, who have tried to take their lives. Why is that? Their source of inspiration is coming from the media. Where is inspiration coming from the media? There is none. So it all begins with going against the beauty of the teaching, and in this case, letting belittlement find its way like a worm into our thinking, into our conversations, into our relationships. So let us, as torchbearers, as carriers of light, be very, very careful about how we speak to one another, how we think about one another, and not allow that worm of belittlement to creep into our thinking and our speech. When any time a new idea, a new philosophy, a new aspect of the teaching is released under the direction of the planetary hierarchy, there will be criticism and attack. If we think these attacks are severe at the beginning of the establishment of a new initiative, they will be 1,000 times more difficult later. If your life took on a heightened spiritual tension at the beginning of your studies, it is 1,000 times more tense now. So we might ask ourselves, why is that? Why, if our life took on a heightened spiritual tension at the beginning of our studies, it is 1,000 times more tense now? Because we're more responsible. We are more sensitive. We've undergone expansion of consciousness. So where our steps put us on the path, whether it was many incarnations ago, when we were a teenager, when we were middle age, or even now, we started with an element of 2 things, of excitement and naivete. Through the process of occult meditation and deep study, our world opens up in such a way that we can no longer be naive and ignorant to the process of life. So our sense of responsibility increases, where it was not at that moment we took on a heightened spiritual tension. If we are progressing and evolving according to nature, then our sense of responsibility for others, caring for others, protecting others, trying to take care of ourselves, our family, our group, our nation, that sense of responsibility increases. That sense of responsibility puts pressure on us and increases the tension. Now, let me move on. The revealer of any new and profound idea almost immediately comes under attack. A messenger of hierarchy will come under the attack of the forces of darkness. A messenger. Think of the messengers we know. They are still under attack today, even if they have made their transition, even if it was 200 years ago. They are still under attack. A messenger of hierarchy will come under the attack of the forces of darkness, as will their co-workers. Therefore, vigilance, daring, courage, honesty, and nobility are required. Honesty, honesty, honesty. Keep that in mind. That's just one virtue. Vigilance, daring, courage, and nobility are the other four virtues besides honesty that are required from co-workers and friends of the teaching of any new movement in order, or a messenger in order not to dissuade or distort the new beginnings. And this was surely true in the case of Agni Yoga. As time moves on, the new idea or movement will gain greater recognition, and the proponents of the idea will find themselves under greater attack from opposing forces. If the consciousness of the members are not focused in the chalice, what will happen is they will fall into despair, disparagement, and doubt. Bringing damage and destruction to the work and to the co-workers. When you study Agni Yoga, one of the themes throughout Agni Yoga is about doubt. It said, do not plant seeds of doubt. What does it mean to plant seeds of doubt? Planting seeds of doubt about your leaders, about your teachers, about your members, about your group. Never speak disparagingly, because to do so means you are speaking against hierarchy. You are speaking against the teaching and bringing damage and destruction to the work and to your co-workers. Spiritual tension occurs when a person enters the path of their life direction, their soul's path. And I think that speaks for most of us here today. Most who are listening to our Sunday lectures on YouTube, which is being listened to by so many people now that it is remarkable. Remarkable to me because it's almost like a new dawn is taking place in the world where people are searching again and finding the teaching. So let me repeat this. Spiritual tension occurs when we enter the path of our life direction, our soul's path. So apply this to yourself. Think about when you first stepped onto the path that became your life path, your soul's direction. And think about the spiritual tension that began back then and how it's become 1,000 times more greater today. The fiery tension of the spirit is very great. For each step in the wrong direction will be experienced as cause and effect. Cause and effect means reaped as karmic adjustment. Cause and effect is karmic adjustment. Spiritual tension means the strings of our soul's mechanism is in perfect concert with our life purpose. And I'm going to repeat that. Spiritual tension, because this is another phrase, a term that you read in Agni Yoga, spiritual tension. Well, what is spiritual tension? Here's your answer. It means the strings of your soul's mechanism is in perfect concert, perfect harmony with your life purpose. If your strings go slack, your actions, emotions, and thoughts will be in discord with your soul and with your evolution. Living in spiritual tension increases the amount of psychic energy we have, which enables us to better engage in the accomplishments of our work and also our spiritual purpose. So striving creates increased spiritual tension. If the strings go slack, then we are going to be in discord with the evolution of our soul. See how that works? If members in a group belittle the work and accomplishments of their co-workers, karma, the law of cause and effect, will result sooner or later. You cannot escape it. You can hide from it, you can pretend, but karma will find you. So let me repeat this. If members in a group belittle the work and accomplishments, remember I'm talking about belittlement today, right? If members in a group belittle the work and accomplishments of their co-workers, karma, the law of cause and effect, will result sooner or later. The paragraph written by Helena Roerich said, "It was said long ago that all your trunks will remain empty and your writing pens dry if you will not understand the affirmations of foundations." To understand this statement means to understand the law of karma. Every manifestation on earth is an idea that was first given birth to in space. That's a vast thought. Yesterday I was speed watching. Is that such a word? Speed watching many hours of a series of DVDs titled Cosmos. This Cosmos was written by Carl Sagan and narrated by Neil deGrasse. I wish I'd had all the hours to completely watch every single one of those DVDs. Because first of all, they were beautiful, and the narration, if you've ever listened to Neil deGrasse, his voice is, oh my God, it's so beautiful. And he's so comforting and calming. Just to listen to him is magnificent. And Carl Sagan, of course, was a magnificent astronomer and brought to life our understanding of, cosmos in a way that few of us had ever heard or been educated about, prior to his teaching. So as I'm thinking about this, every manifestation on earth is an idea that was first given birth to in space. One of the titles of one of the DVDs and stories was Immortality, the Immortals. We think about this. Think about this. This goes way beyond the pale. We have an idea. Let's take this group. This group came as an idea from space and manifested. Now the work that this group is doing is going to be immortal because it's bouncing back. There's a reciprocity taking place between hierarchy and this group. The work this group is doing in response to hierarchy. This is how immortality functions. And it all begins from an idea in space. Just like the planet began from an idea in space. New hierarchical movements are the result of higher thought through the science of contact. It is through the science of contact the mind of a person or of a group is impressed by higher directions. Higher directions which come from hierarchy. This is a group that was initialized by hierarchy. I don't know if you know that or not. It was initialized by hierarchy, so it makes this group sacred. It is through the science of contact the mind of a person or a group is impressed by higher directions which can come from hierarchical, solar, galactic, or zodiacal sources. It is through the science of contact a person comes in contact with the hierarchy, where they can penetrate into the mysteries of the plan of hierarchy and bring an aspect of that plan into manifestation. And I'm talking here, I was thinking about the logo of White Mountain. That logo was impressed in my mind. It was given to us by a master. And then I had to contact an artist because I am not. I'm a musician, but I don't draw. And so I had to contact an artist, and she came in and we sat down and I explained the whole impression, which was given as a hologram, went into my brain. Oh my God, I can't draw this. 7 stars. Still can't even draw, except you know that weird. So I called an artist, and she said the most difficult part of the drawing was the eye. She said, do you know how difficult it is to draw the eye? So if you look at our symbol, maybe you'll have more respect for it. You know, I didn't call a business up that designed logos for people. This came from a messenger. Helena Roerich in this letter is reminding a student that they must affirm the origins of the teaching, or like a leaf on a tree in time of drought, they will shrivel up and become empty of the teaching. Their future will be bleak. In the next paragraph of the letter, she goes on to say, there are certain times when belittling and concealing are even worse than the most ferocious vexations and slander. No wonder that belittling and concealing are considered by the great teachers as subtle betraying. We may well remember that this desire for self-glory at the cost of belittling the leader will not result in anything. By glorifying the leader, we glorify ourselves. By belittling the leader, we destroy ourselves. When I think about, as a Gemini, I'm a reader. I love to read. I have 30,000 books in my house, and most of them are written, not all of them. But since I've become very active with Agni Yoga over the many years, I seem to find myself with books being sent to me, or I'll find them written on the lives of the Roerichs in a negative sense. how they belittle their works, how they belittled this master artist, Nicholas Roerich, how they belittled Helena Roerich. It is unbelievable how they took the sacredness of the lives of these two great ones and belittled everything they did. So let me repeat this. We may well remember that the desire for self-glory at the cost of belittling the leader will not result in anything. By glorifying the leader, we glorify ourselves. By belittling the leader, we destroy ourselves. One of the ways we can belittle the leader, belittle the teaching, is by being hypocritical about the teaching, not practicing the teaching, boasting that I'm a student of this or that spiritual path, but not practicing it. That's a subtle way, a covert way of belittling the teaching and the leader of the teaching, like the master. The cosmic law of correspondence is inevitable. The best pages of history were written when at the head I somehow, my printer printed front backside. You know how tough this is? Anyway, let me go back. The best pages of history were written when at the head of a movement was a leader who was followed by devoted and conscious co-workers, ready at every moment to sacrifice everything for the glory of the work. If you go to, I'm never going to get through this 7-page document. So many ideas are flooding in. If you go to White Mountain's website, go down the menu where it says Agni Yoga Quarterly. Go into that section of our website and start reading Agni Yoga Quarterly. You're going to read about the early members of the Agni Yoga Society and their devotion to Helena and Nicholas Roerich. Their devotion not by sitting at their feet, but by engaging in labor, in work, in promoting the teaching of hierarchy, in this case, Agni Yoga. The sacrifices they made was just absolutely remarkable. They couldn't just jump on a plane and 3 hours later, be in Europe or being in South America. It took a monumental effort, what they did. So if you want to learn about the early beginnings of Agni Yoga, read about it in Agni Yoga Quarterly. There are many, 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 many articles in there, well-researched, well-written, that you will learn. It's like this morning I was engaged in an email conversation with someone who is considering coming to our March conference. And I directed her to a 2017, the October, November, December issue of 2017. There's an article in that issue where Natalia Fulman, who is the head archivist at the Nicholas Roerich Museum, wrote about the early beginnings of Agni Yoga. It is a magnificent article. If you haven't read it, take your time and do so. It will introduce you to the whole startup of Agni Yoga and those who were devoted and conscious co-workers who sacrificed everything for the glory of the work. And do we not also revere their names alongside the leader? It's like Francis Grant. There is I can't remember all their names. They're odd names. Catherine Stibbe. She contributed so much money to that movement that money has replicated itself, had been so well invested, it is still paying for the salaries of the members of the museum. She gave all of her money when she died in her estate to the Agni Yoga Society to make sure it would continue. Even in schools, we learn the names of the co-workers of the great leaders, teachers, and thinkers. And does not history point out the backsliders? And backsliders are certainly regarded in contempt. To define backsliders are those who relapse or retrogress. They degenerate and revert to a former state. Wow, I'm not even going to get to half of today's talk. So I'm going to start just reading my notes so I can get through more. If we are full of doubt, if we deviate in lack of confidence and in fear, this is Helena Roerich's writing in her letter. If we are full of doubt, if we deviate in lack of confidence and in fear, then of course we fall out of the path illumined by the ray of the teacher. And falling into darkness, we at best risk breaking our nose. We are told not to enter the path of Agni Yoga if we are fearful, if we are faint-hearted. For the further along the path we are, the more severely we will be tested. As the accumulated spiritual tension increases, so does the pressure. If we do not have the endurance, the fortitude, the tolerance, the patience to withstand the tension of these tests in the path of fire, the path of Agni Yoga is not for you. We must test our nature so that hidden things will come to the surface. Your earthly teacher, if you have one, will encourage these tests to be revealed from within your nature. You must find these things before the time becomes critical, in such a way that tragic loss and damage do not result. The path becomes extremely difficult and puts your vehicles under spiritual tension. You must learn to stand steadfast with your morals, virtues, and spiritual laws and not fall into self-doubt, into fear and judgment, into negative criticism and justification of your actions as one who seeks to take the easy way out. The nature of your character will be so severely tested as you begin to create a strong foundation for your soul to carry the chalice of the teaching. Let your soul carry the chalice of the teaching. We may well remember the desire for self-glory at the cost of belittling the leader will not result in anything. By glorifying the teacher, we glorify ourselves. By belittling the teacher, we destroy ourselves. Belittling the leader is a pattern which results with those who have not applied the teaching, have not practiced spiritual discipline. They have not purified their heart and thought. Rather than finding themselves increasing in devotion and virtue, they find themselves directed by their ego and their vanity, which casts a shadow over their soul. As vanity and ego increases, they eventually see themselves as more important than the leader. And rather than respecting the labor of the leader, they begin to glorify themselves. We saw this. If you read about the history of those many, many beautiful people that were following and engaging in the work of the Roerichs, you saw that happening. Even those that came under the impression of hierarchy and were following messengers of hierarchy, this happened to them. They began to see themselves as more important than the leader. And rather than respecting the labor of the leader, they began to glorify themselves. However, as Helena Roerich wrote, by belittling the leader, we destroy ourselves. I think I'm going to have to stop here. So let me wrap it up with this one paragraph, and then we'll have to talk. But it's enough. It was kind of heavy this morning, but it's really important to know these things. This is a serious side of the teaching, and we're not here to be entertained, we're here to be educated. So if the consciousness of the members are not focused in the chalice, they will fall into despair and disparagement and doubt, bringing damage and destruction to the work and to the co-workers. I've been around the block several times now, and I've just always, it never ceases to shock me when I see a worker who is so dedicated and so devoted to the teaching become a backslider. People you would never expect it to happen, and it does. So we must be vigilant and observe ourselves, observe our language, observe our thoughts. Be a practitioner of meditation. Be humble. I truly believe that those of us that have humility as a natural part of our personality will not have to worry about being a backslider. So maybe that would be a virtue to study and to think about and to observe of what kind of power humility gives to a leader. Most of us that have studied about the lives of the Roerichs remember the many images of Helena Roerich where she's standing under a black umbrella, always behind her husband and her two sons, and in one case, Nehru. They knew so many great people and had tea with so many great people, and she always put herself under the umbrella in the second row. That's humility. So I'm going to close there. And maybe later on we'll have the second half. If you have an interest in this,